Hi, I'm Julie Sweetland from the Frameworks Institute, and you are tuning in to episode 8 of our online modules exploring research findings from the Farming and Food Narrative Project. Thanks for joining. In this video, I'll be exploring how the metaphor of a tightrope can help to rebalance the conversation about farming. Metaphors are an especially powerful tool for building understanding. Metaphors are based on what people know about concrete, familiar, simple objects and experiences like gears or houses or other everyday things. And they recruit that everyday knowledge to help with the task of thinking about something abstract, complex, or just unfamiliar. For many people, the world of farming is just that, especially when it comes to thinking about topics like sustainable practices or the pressures that farming faces today. Our research into current public thinking found that people value farming and appreciate it as challenging work. But at the same time, they think of farming as relatively simple work, and they don't appreciate the complexity involved in farming or farmers' expertise in managing this complexity. And all that sounds like a job to metaphor for me. So here are the ideas we wanted to translate using a metaphor. That farming involves complex decision making and risk management. Farmers must consistently make hard choices around selecting, growing, handling, storing, packing, selling, and marketing crops. Variables and risks abound, managing pests, preserving the soil, responding to weather, keeping workers safe, meeting regulations, adapting to market trends and fluctuations. Farming is a business where it's challenging to turn a profit, mostly because of the cost-price squeeze. The fact that the cost to produce a crop have risen faster than the prices crops sell for, and that makes the economics of farming exceedingly difficult. Also, the idea that farming is diverse in both scale and practice, and that means that there are many approaches to sustainable farming. What's common is that they all involve integrating economic, environmental, and social goals. So economic goals, making decisions that allow farmers and farm workers to be compensated fairly and continue to remain competitive in the marketplace. Environmental goals, using farming practices that protect, respect, or restore the soil, water, air, and life on and around the farm. And social goals, making decisions that promote the health and well-being of farmers, farm workers, consumers, and the broader community. So meeting some of those goals, the farming practices that benefit the environment and society in particular, are a cost for farmers, and they can be expensive, yet that cost, that investment, can go unacknowledged and undercompensated by society. So these are the ideas we wanted to get across, and we developed and tested several different metaphors. If you want to hear more about that process, you can look back to the methods video or check out the report that details this. But today I'm just going to focus on the winning metaphor, and that's the metaphor of a tightrope. That when we compare farmers' risky, complex decision making to crossing a tightrope, we found that people appreciate the balancing act involved in farming. So this is talking about how current policy and market conditions make it harder for farms to make it across, and how the right types of changes in policy and practice and research and funding, any of those types of changes could help farmers strike the right balance. We found that the metaphor of crossing a tightrope helps the public to appreciate the multiple priorities that farmers have to balance. And they help them to see that a public response is required to kind of stabilize that tightrope to prevent farms from taking a long, hard fall. In the experiments we ran, the tightrope metaphor was highly effective in building the understanding that current policies discourage sustainable farming methods, and that sometimes farmers can't adopt sustainable farming practices even if they want to. And in focus groups, people responded to the metaphor as a good explanation of concepts that were familiar, like the fact that family farms are struggling, but they used it to deepen their understanding of why. They got into thinking about external causes and possible solutions. All right, so here's this metaphor. If you've ever seen someone walk a tightrope or tried it yourself, you know that balancing is hard. Leaning too far one way or the other means trouble. Farmers are constantly crossing a tightrope. Every farmer must strike a balance. They need to protect the environment and protect their crops from insects and diseases. They need to pay workers a good wage and cover expensive, like more effective equipment and technology. And they need to do all this while balancing unpredictable weather, fluctuating prices, and changing market trends. Our policies should work to stabilize farmers, but instead they often make the tightrope harder to cross. We could set policies that work more like a bridge, giving farmers the support they need as they balance worker needs, health and safety issues, new investments, and their commitment to protect and restore the environment. Now, that's very similar to the language we tested. I do want to say that this is a theme, not a script. This is the general idea of that metaphor. You could swap in different examples, say it in slightly different words, but that's the idea. On the next part of this video, I'm going to show you some other video, a peek into the focus groups where we tested this metaphor. All right, let's listen in.
What did you understand from that? What was the main point that you took away?
We're walking a tightrope. It's a balancing game. It's very difficult.
A tough life to try and make a living in. That's why they're on a tightrope.
Farmers working on a tightrope, having to pay employees, keep their land stable, worry about insecticides, etc.
They've got to make money, but they also want to do good for the environment and the economy. And it's really hard, to do that on a limited budget.
A decision that's good for your family and for profitability might not be good for the environment or your workers.
Do you want to pay this type of wage? Do you want to have better conditions for your workers? Do you want it to be just a little bit less profitable so that you can actually, make it so that it's a little bit easier for people?
It made me think of farming as more of a business, right? I just didn't think of it that way prior to this conversation.
I think we need to develop some kind of bridge for them that will help them to be able to pay their workers and still make a livable salary for themselves and their families.
If you develop something for the grocery store that had like an American flag and it said, I don't know, bridge work or something as the name of the program, it's so that you could go to the grocery store and see, okay, this is produced by these farmers that are, getting the resources that they need. So it may cost a little bit more. If I understood that going to the grocery store, I would buy it every single time.
So you can see there that people were really grappling with the on-farm realities and with the decision-making process that farmers have to go through. That's really significantly different from the thinking we found in research where they just assume farmers just grow what people want. Enough said. All right, so how can you use this metaphor, which we strongly recommend? It's a really powerful tool in your toolbox of ways to deepen public understanding and thinking about sustainable farming. First, express the metaphor creatively. This metaphor of tightrope comes with a lot of options for vivid imagery and varied vocabulary. So you can talk about balancing, you can talk about being wobbly, or shaky. You can talk about the winds, right, that are affecting you as you're crossing this tightrope. Make the most of all of that to create compelling, lively communications about farming context and policy. Also, use this metaphor to emphasize that change is possible. You don't have to just talk about the problem. You can also talk about the possibility of solutions. Talk about what can help farmers achieve balance, stability, or steady footing. You heard the people in the video really saying, well, we should build a bridge, right? And really that's a fine and good extension of this, something solid and stable that's designed to be crossed easily. Use the metaphor. I think this metaphor, you can use it to introduce farmers' perspectives without zooming in tightly on individuals. We know from our own research at Frameworks and lots of social science that when you zoom in on very particular kind of the story, you put a face on the issue to say, those typical stories, people don't generalize from the particular up to the general issue. So those typical stories of individual farmers, kind of out there, sad that they're losing their family farm, those without some careful framing around them, they run the risk of reinforcing fatalistic assumptions about farming. Too bad, there's not a lot we can do about it. That's the way of the world. Or romantic views. Oh, let's pat those farmers on the head. Don't they just love the land? So we want to use this metaphor to help people, right? Move from those very compelling, powerful individual experiences that farmers have, but help farmers connect that individual experience out to the broader trend. And you also can extend this metaphor and recruit it to the challenge of thinking about equity issues on farm or that faces farming. So we can highlight challenges that face different types of farmers. So to bring attention to problems that face women or people of color, immigrants or younger farmers in farming. You can talk about, for instance, how they're crossing that tightrope in winds blowing against them, or other ways of really emphasizing that these are shared concerns that many farmers share. They're widespread concerns, and they can be more intense or disproportionately or differentially affect farmers who have been historically excluded or who face other challenges in society. All right, so I hope that is enough to convince you to cross into the land of metaphorical communications. You can learn more in these resources if you want more detail about why we developed a metaphor, how we tested it. But otherwise, I hope you will just keep exploring our resources either at farmingandfoodnarrative.org or at frameworksinstitute.org. Thanks so much.